You never want them to assume that you got it at Goodwill. Hello ladies, thank you so much for tuning into my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sherane and I bring you fashion and lifestyle video content. In today's video, I am just giving you guys 10 thrift tips, especially for beginners. If you've never thrifted before, but you just have a curiosity, if you're interested in thrifting, this video would definitely help you. I used to own a vintage boutique many years ago. I have loved thrifting for a long time. I've probably been thrifting since like 2006, 2007. So thrifting has definitely been near and dear to my heart for a very long time. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been some years where I just wasn't thrifting at all. I just wasn't in the mood. I wasn't inspired. Recently, I started thrifting again and I have rekindled my love for it again. So I'm here to share 10 tips that can help you out on your next thrift trip. All right, you guys, so let's get started. I will be referring to some notes on my phone, so if I'm looking down, I promise I'm not being rude. Right, so the first tip is to make sure you're staying up to date on current trends when it comes to fashion. Now, whether you are browsing Zara's website or H&M's website, whether you are looking at Vogue.com or Harper's Bazaar, wherever to look at the latest, runway fashion shows, whether you are following fashion influencers, you want to stay up to date on current trends. You definitely don't want to pick pieces out or style pieces that have you looking dated. I think that is one common mistake that happens when people first start thrifting or when you first fall in love with vintage fashion. You may pick pieces out that are so nostalgic, yet you may not know how to style them to make them look current. You never want to wear a piece that looks like it came out of the thrift store. You always want to style it to where people have to guess, where did you get that? Oh, I got this from the thrift store. You never want them to assume that you got it at Goodwill. And now this is not to say that you can't find classic pieces at the thrift store or style classic pieces. I'm all about having classic blazers and jackets and coats that you can wear just, forever. You still want to make sure you're styling it to where it looks current. You do not want to look dated. So my second tip is to have a wish list. If you are new at thrifting, it can definitely be overwhelming. There are so many things in the thrift store. There are so many items to go through. It is always good to have a wish list in mind so that you know what to focus on first. Not to say that you can't be open, because I'm all about being open, because you just never know what you may find, but it's always good to have a wish list so that you're not overwhelmed or you're just not hoarding a bunch of items because they're $2. That is another common mistake. When I first started thrifting, I used to thrift and pick up everything. I felt like my thrift trip wasn't a success unless I had a bag full of items. Even transitioning from being a boutique owner to now just thrifting for myself, it's definitely a transition because I may see pieces that I love. If you're familiar with my channel, you've seen it in my Thrift With Me videos. There are pieces that I just don't take home because the sizing is off or it's not something that I need in my wardrobe. Have a wish list in mind so that you're filling holes in your wardrobe and you're not just hoarding a bunch of stuff that you don't need. There have been times where I went thrifting and just redonated the pieces back. So it's basically I just gave the thrift store, money because I thrifted a bunch of pieces that I don't need or that I really did not want, but I just felt the need to take something home. And then next thing you know, I'm donating it right back to Goodwill. Okay. So this tip is definitely one that is not often discussed, but make sure you have your phone charged and ready to search name brands and fabrics and designers that you're unfamiliar with. You will be surprised. You will be surprised at the amount of money hanging on that rack at the thrift store. There are certain designers that the staff at the thrift store are unfamiliar with, and they're pricing it pretty much wrong. This has happened to me tons of times where I look at something and I'm like, looks interesting, or it looks more expensive, or you can kind of tell by the cut in the fabric. Whatever the case is, you know, I will Google it right then and there and discover this thing is worth $700. You never know. So make sure your phone is ready and charged to look up brands that you're unfamiliar with, the designers that you're unfamiliar with, and even fabrics that you're unfamiliar with. All right, so my fourth tip is to toss all items of interest in your cart. Don't contemplate and waste time while you're going through the racks. If you're drawn to a certain item, toss it in the cart. What I normally do is put every item of interest in my cart, and then I make the decision later on. You want to toss all items of interest in your cart because there's only one. There's only one. And a lot of time, the psyche behind shoppers is if one person is looking at something, picks it up and shows interest in it, someone else is going to also show interest in it, or they become interested in it. So tip number 5, thoroughly inspect each item before you make the decision to purchase. If you love an item that you've placed in your cart while you're trying it on in the fitting room or right before you go to the register, make sure you thoroughly inspect it for stains, loose thread. You never know. Seams may be busted. Now, don't get me wrong, certain things can be easily fixed, but you want to make sure you're not just rushing, making a purchase, and then when you come home and you're ready to clean it or send it to the dry cleaner, you notice a huge stain. Make sure you thoroughly inspect each item before taking it home. All right, so tip number 6. Check every department, especially the men's, ladies. I'm telling you, I find some of the best pieces in the men's department, but definitely check every department. I do suggest that you check all sizes that are especially larger than you. You never know when it comes to sizing what would work on you. Many thrift stores size inaccurately because number one, vintage pieces are sized differently than current pieces. A 14 20 years ago is not a 14 today. Or also too, many people just place items they decide they don't want after trying it on in any department. So my 7th tip is to familiarize yourself with a tailor or seamstress as well as their rates. Because when you're thrifting, there are pieces that you can alter, but you want to make sure it's worth the investment. If there are certain things like taking in certain pants at the waist, you know that could be an easy alteration job, or if a pants needs to be hemmed from the bottom. Those are usually really simple, easy alterations. However, don't try to get a dress that needs to be taken in, hemmed, you know, cut the sleeves off. You want to make sure you're keeping the rates or the investment in getting something altered in mind before you invest in a piece. So definitely get familiar with the rates of your local tailor or seamstress. All right, so tip number 8. Wear fitted clothing so that you can easily try on pieces. Certain thrift stores, especially after the pandemic, no longer gives you access to a fitting room. So you want to make sure you are wearing pieces that you can easily place a jacket over, a dress over, basic fitted pieces such as leggings, fitted tank top, or fitted t-shirt, pieces where you can try on clothes easily in the middle of the store. In addition to that, remember, these clothes are pre-loved, pre-worn. You would think people who are donating clothes to the thrift store would make sure they wash the clothes prior to, but oftentimes they don't. So you also want to be careful from trying on clothes on your bare skin. I personally don't feel comfortable trying on clothes at the thrift store against my bare skin before I get it cleaned. All right, so my next tip is to wear neutrals, especially if you are a beginner when it comes to thrifting, or if you need to try something on to see if you love it or not. Me, I don't always have to try on every single piece. I try it on for fit, but when it comes to the styling portion, I can envision something and it look the way I imagined it in my head. But everybody is not like that, especially if you are a beginner when it comes to thrifting or just styling and fashion overall. So I suggest you wear neutrals so you can thrift whatever color, be able to try it on and envision how it would look styled on you, versus if you're thrifting while wearing a bunch of bright colors that may clash against the pieces that you're thrifting and you can't envision what it would look like. Most of the time I'm wearing all black just so I can have a better vision of what something will look like, especially if my piece has a lot of color to it. Tip number 10. Limit the company you keep while at the thrift store. Listen, there are certain days where thrifting to me is like very therapeutic. One of those hobbies that, I don't know, I just have so much peace doing it alone. But also too, I don't like to be distracted by thrifting with other people. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain people who I can shop with, like my sister or my mom. But to be honest with you, I really enjoy thrifting by myself. Also, when you're thrifting alone, you're listening to what you want and what feels right to you without the opinions of other people. Personally, I think this is a tip that can apply to shopping in general. Unless you really need help, really need assistance when it comes to styling and choosing the best pieces, if you are good on that on your own, go by yourself, okay? Do not go with a group of people or a bunch of other people, because what ends up happening is you pick up a piece that you're drawn to, somebody passes you or somebody you're with is like, I don't like that, or I don't like that color. It's not about what they like, it's about what you like. And we are human, so sometimes those who are closest to us, for people who, you know, whose opinions we respect, it may influence us and you may leave a piece and then have regret because you're still thinking about that piece that you should have purchased. I'm telling you, go thrifting by yourself, especially as a beginner, so that you can be in tune and just stay focused on what feels right to you. There are certain pieces that just speak to me, that feel good to me, and if I'm by myself, I have no distraction and I'm choosing what I like, what feels good to me. I'm not choosing based on what someone else like, what someone else will wear, or how someone else would style it. Now, there are definitely exceptions to the rule. Like I mentioned before, me and my sister will go thrifting sometimes, but we still shop independently within the space at the thrift store. When you are shopping in a group and when you guys are going through racks together, sometimes there are just way too many opinions flying out, okay? You want to make sure you are focused on what feels good to you to choose while thrifting. So here's a bonus tip. Do not feel pressured to leave the thrift store with a bag full of items. There are some cases where you may only leave with one item at the thrift store. There are some cases where you may leave with nothing. And don't feel bad because you feel like it was an unsuccessful thrift trip. You are not guaranteed to find pieces that you are in love with or pieces that you need. And that's why, to me, it's best to thrift often. You can't just go thrifting once a month and just assume you're going to find every piece imaginable or every piece you need. You can't assume that you're gonna find pieces you love. Although I thrift often, there are so many times I leave with nothing out of the thrift store. There have been many times where I have purchased nothing just because I don't want to hoard items that I'm not truly in love with. So definitely keep that in mind. Don't assume that you have to leave out with a bag full of items every time you thrift. And there will be some cases where you don't find anything, or there'll be some cases where you only find one thing. All right, you guys, so that concludes this video. You have 10 tips plus a bonus tip when it comes to thrifting. So I hope these tips helped you. And if you have a rule that you follow, whether I mentioned it or not, make sure you leave it in the comments below so we can help each other in this community. Enlighten me on something that I haven't mentioned so that I can thrift better. I am always open to learning, okay? I'm never too seasoned to learn something new. I want to get better and grow at thrifting as well. So if you have a rule that you always follow, make sure you leave it in the comment section. Or rules that you follow, make sure you leave it in the comment section. And if I listed a rule that you follow or that you truly believe in, let me know in the comments. And if you are new here and you enjoy the content, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. I usually upload on Sundays as well as Thursdays. Make sure you follow me on my other platforms at Sherane_H, especially Instagram. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.